Hello and welcome to the final episode of Zwick's Flicks, the Ed Zwick podcast. This is the wrap-up show, you could argue. It's the first time I've actually done a solo show, I think, in all my podcasting years. As the amazing podcaster that I am, I've usually always had a co-host on. I very rarely, if ever, have really flown solo. I've done a couple little shows here and there by myself. It's more of a commentary type episodes, but definitely for this podcast, this is the first time I've run solo, and I really admire those fellow podcasters that I've podcast with, such as Katie for her Retromade podcast, and Craig at times for his the Palma podcast that he's doing. Hearing them fly solo, it's always admirable to hear them do it because they do a great job on their own. And I don't know if I like the sound of my own voice. I don't know if you guys like the sound of my voice. But bear with me because today is actually going to be, I think it's going to be a fun little exercise, a fun little show. We're going to talk about where this podcast is going. So if you're listening to this right now, do not delete the feed because shortly after this episode drops, there is going to be a title change to the podcast. It is now forever going to be known as the Director's Chair Network. How do you like them apples? That's right, the Director's Chair Network. I thought this was just a simple title, just to indicate that, yes, the classic chair that the director sits in to call action. And I don't know, I think there's just nothing more, wonderfully cliche than the director's chair, the spot where the director sits. It's used in movies that we see and TV shows and pictures. But yeah, the chair of the director. The Director's Chair Network, what it's going to basically entail is, every season will have its own director. So season 1 was Edward Zwick. Season 2, we have fellow Craig Cohan of the GOAT podcast, the Brian De Palma coverage. His show will be season 2. And season 3 will be me again with Michael Mann. And at the time of this recording, I'm recording that episode tomorrow at the time of this recording. So quick changes to this network. So I'm really excited to be doing that. We'll be doing Michael Mann's debut film, Thief. So stick around, folks, if you want to hear the Michael Mann coverage and Brian De Palma coverage. So I'm excited for those changes because the one thing I learned or enjoyed about doing this podcast journey with Ed Zwick is just how much I enjoy films in general, especially this era of filmography and when I was really big into films, teenage life to early adulthood. And it just reminded me again of why I like film so much. And I just finished watching Michael Mann's Thief, and that same feeling came back to me. It's like, man, I love these films, this era of films. Nothing to say about today's films, not at all, because Michael Mann and even Ed Zwick, as late as 2018, they were making films and great films. I think it's nice to sometimes watch films that aren't always comic book films or whatever, or I don't know. And nothing against those films, but I like these standalone stories, the good old standalone stories. So what we're doing today is we are going to rank I'm going to rank the films of Ed Zwick, and I'm going to do that for the end of each season as well. And let me know via comments, email, if my ranking system was bunk, if you totally disagree, and that's fine. Look, it's all subjective. There is no objective. How can you be objective? It's art, and stories speak to you for different reasons in different ways. And I almost hesitated doing a ranking list of sorts because it can, I don't know. I feel like because maybe something's last, it doesn't mean it's not good. All right, so we are going to rank Ed Zwick's 13 films. Why do I keep saying we? I'm so used to having a co-host. I'm going to do this. Maybe we, the audience. So let me know if you agree with the rankings. But before we get to the rankings, I thought it'd be fun to let you guys know how each movie did at the box office. We touched on that. But you probably forget, I certainly forget, I wouldn't be able to list all the films in order. So we're going to go from least box office to greatest. Let me know what you think was the greatest box office or least box office film of Ed Zwick's career. And I did adjust for inflation. The reason why I do this is important because if a movie ticket costs $1, obviously, let's say 50 years ago, and it sold 1 million tickets, it's going to be $1 million at the box office, right? That's not fair if now inflation is tickets cost $15, right? So that's what I did. I made sure that the number kind of represents tickets sold, if that makes sense. So that's why I think inflation is important to adjust for. If this movie sold the same amount of tickets in 2025, what would its box office be? Strap in, folks. This is very exciting. At number 13, we have Trial by Fire. Not really a big surprise there. It almost makes you feel sad and bad that Ed's last film, and I'm not going to say what I feel about it just right now. This isn't what this part's about because we're going to get into the ranking. But yeah, it is a little sad that his last film was his least successful film at the box office. $185,000 only. So I guess that limited screen run did not produce the box office shot in the arm that was needed to have a wider release, is my guess. At number 12, we have Leaving Normal, coming in with $3.5 million at the box office. Yeah, that's a little low. It came out in competition with Thelma and Louise, and I remember we talked about it when we read the audiobook, I believe, that it just whimpered at the box office. Ed blamed bad timing in the news, the Rodney King stuff and LA riots, and I don't know. Not that Ed's making excuses, but maybe this just did not resonate with audiences then. At number 11, we have Pawn Sacrifice with a $7.5 million at the box office. Again, I shouldn't be too surprised by that. It's a chess movie, right? That did star Tobey Maguire. I would say half of that draw was probably Tobey fans at the very least. All right, now we're going to the top 10. Now, this is very surprising to me. Number 10. I was surprised, and this is adjusted for inflation. I find this very surprising because it's my understanding this film was both loved by critics and by audiences, but maybe it found life at the DVD rentals and buying. Glory. 1989's Glory, $67.8 million. Again, Glory, I'm surprised. Coming in at number 9, Defiance with $76 million. I wonder why that one didn't do that great. Again, not bad, not great, $76 million. And I suspect that Daniel Craig being in that film probably helped it out a little bit. And number 8, we have About Last Night. Look at that. His first film, $107 million. And the turnaround or the profit in that film was pretty high, which probably allowed Ed to get Glory. So About Last Night, maybe good timing, 86 film, romantic comedy, dramedy, healthy $107 million. Coming in at $148 million was Love and Other Drugs. Again, not too surprising. We have Jake Gyllenhaal and Anne Hathaway, very strong actors in their own right. Young, good-looking, good date movie, $148 million. Now we're into the $200 million mark area. We have Jack Reacher's Never Go Back, 2016 Tom Cruise vehicle. Goes without saying, Tom Cruise, very rarely does he have a box office bomb, just his name alone. Even today, it's a pretty marquee name. That probably drove a lot of the box office. It wasn't quite the hope or the draw that they wanted box office-wise because we never got a third film. 1996's Courage Under Fire is next with $218 million. That's strong, very strong. And this one surprised me. The Siege did better than Courage Under Fire at $240 million. Now we're going to the last three. No surprises here. At $276 million, we have Blood Diamond. That movie did very well. When Doug and I talked about this when we did the show, and we'll get into our breakdown, but I'm surprised it did this well to some degree because it is such a hard watch. So I don't think this film was a repeat viewing film. I don't think people went back necessarily to watch it again in the theaters. The draw of Leo DiCaprio was probably a big part of it. It just looked like an exciting film, heavy on the drama. I wouldn't say action, but there was just obviously a lot of tense action moments throughout the film. And at number 2, Legends of the Fall with $361 million. Not too shabby for a movie about a guy on a horse and a bear. Lastly, doubling Legends of the Fall, by far Zwick's biggest film success, was nearing, I mean, we're talking nearing the $800 million box office mark if it came out today with the ticket prices of today and it sold what it sold today. And this would be considered a huge success. So would Legends of the Fall 360, quite frankly, or Blood Diamond, even today's standards of film box office. The Last Samurai, nearing $800 million at the box office. Wow. Okay. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed the little bit of a journey there of where films fell into the box office journey, adjusted for inflation for ticket sales. Now we're getting to the nitty gritty. Now we're getting to the fun part, you could say. We're going to have Ryan's rankings. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Here is how I rank these films. This probably doesn't come as any surprise, but at number 13, we have Pawn Sacrifice, the chess movie. Not a bad idea of a film, or a bad idea for a character of a film. Craig and I talked about this, and we both agreed that the last 2 minutes of this film, where we got the, what do you call it, the epilogue, stating where Bobby Fischer had gone with his life, how he went off the grid, and all these conspiratorial stuff. That should have been the film. The film should have started with his final match with his opponent, the Russian opponent, and then go into his after, when he went really mentally rogue, as you could say, when his brain went chess crazy. Because you can see even in this movie poster, you're watching this on YouTube, you've got the image of the chess pieces of the game, squares flying out of Bobby Fischer's mind to indicate that he's losing his mind because of chess and everything else. That, you know, to be a genius in some way, he's losing his mind, ironically, by being that genius. That would have been the better film. But yeah, this comes in last. Of the films with my ranking, I think Pawn Sacrifice truly was a film where it was a bit of a slog to get through. And I hate that, because Ed, even with some of his other, I think for almost the next 12 films, weren't slogs to get through. And now I have to rank them, and there's reasons why I put them where I put them. It doesn't make them necessarily bad films, but I would give Pawn Sacrifice, we didn't give them letter grades. It is my last movie. We said it throughout the episode. Yeah, it was boring. It was more well acted. Liev Schreiber did a great job in his role. I almost wish I had more of him. I think the character that Toby played and the way he played it was a combination of Toby's acting, which I know he's a good actor, but his acting of Bobby Fischer it was a slog and not a great watch. But I thank Craig for joining me for that. At number 12, we have Leaving Normal. Now, again, don't get mad at me. Leaving Normal was an adorable, fun film. All these films I enjoyed. I think Pawn Sacrifice, I hate to say, but it might be legit the one film of his 13 that I don't know if I necessarily even enjoyed. I'm glad I watched it. Look at me. I'm trying to be an apologist here, but not every film by every director is going to be amazing. But Ed has a pretty good record of just enjoyable films, right? And Leaving Normal was a fun film. It was perfectly enjoyable. In fact, it was more enjoyable than I anticipated when I saw that he did this. His filmography, I never really heard of it. It looks like most of the public hasn't really heard of it. But it was a completely enjoyable, fun film. I don't think I have any real desire to go back and watch it. I think for the rest of this list, folks, it's going to be a combination of maybe what were my expectations? Were they even met, or was it higher then? So this is a situation where my expectations were low, but I found myself quite enjoying it. But then what is my kind of spiritual connection? How do I identify with this film? And I do admit, two lovely women seeking healing and adventure with themselves. Well done. I didn't identify with their journey, like in the sense of I didn't find myself in with them on the journey, but I enjoyed watching their journey. It was very well acted by Meg Tilly and Christian Lotti, and it was a fun film, and it was fun to see Ed tackle this type of film. I believe, if I remember correctly, this did come after Glory, so it's an interesting film after Glory. So number 12, Leaving Normal. At number 11, we have the 2010 movie Love and Other Drugs. And I knew Ed had done this film for years. It came out in 2010. And I remember when this film came out and Ed Zwick had directed it. I remember just by the movie poster, this was different than his previous outings with Blood Diamond, stuff like that. So I knew this was a different film, but I never just got around to watching it. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I can remember what's going on in my life. I don't mind saying, in 2010, I was going through a divorce and I started dating my current wife, Becky, and everything's fine, but it's just a tumultuous time in my life, 2009, 10. So films in that area, I just probably had other things on my mind than watching Love and Other Drugs. So then as the years go on, there's just certain movies as years go on, you're like, oh, I'll get to it. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I got to it. It ranks just a little bit higher than Leaving Normal because I think there's more oomph in this movie. I think I enjoyed watching Jake a lot, and that's the thing. So I think for this movie to rank a little higher than Leaving Normal, Jake is an incredible actor. I really like his acting. So I don't think I've ever watched, again, a movie that Jake has been in where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a slog or this is boring. He just has so much charisma. He was great to look at. Yes, guys, I can say that too about men. He was great to look at, and he was a great charisma. And which brings us to Anne Hathaway. I said during that episode with Kaylee, thank you, Kaylee, for joining me on that episode. She's just not my favorite actress. Just something about her. I don't know what it is. It's just a sense I get with her. I could be totally wrong. I just don't see myself thinking she's, I don't know. It's weird. It's just some celebrities, they're all public figures, right? Hey, look, there's probably people who listen to me who probably don't think I'm that great. So it's just how we feel about certain personalities or people. And it does come through even in their acting. I know my many-time co-host, Katie, she feels that way about Nicolas Cage for some reason. And that might be blasphemy for a lot of you listeners, but there you go. She just does not like Nicolas Cage. Does she have any reason not to like him? I don't know. It's just a feeling that people get, and sometimes you just can't shake it. So for me, it was Anne Hathaway in this film. I would be very interested to see a different actress in this role, how much I would have enjoyed the film. Like, I'm talking like everything's the same, but it's a different actress acting the parts. And if I got to pick my own actress, I'd have to figure out who would I want to see naked many times throughout the film, because yes, you get to see Anne Hathaway naked a lot, and no complaints there. I'm just saying, yeah, if you are interested in seeing a naked Anne Hathaway, Love and Other Drugs is your film. At number 10, we have Courage Under Fire. I had Jared with me for that one. Thank you, Jared, for joining me on that episode. Of the three Denzel films, this one ranks the lowest for me. Not for Denzel. Denzel, like Jake, do you ever watch a Denzel film and think, oh boy, Denzel. Denzel brings it every role. In a movie with some strong acting and some interesting storyline, I would say Denzel was definitely the best, the highlight of that film. And I only wish Ed and Denzel did a fourth film together. I don't think any of us would have complained had they done more films together. And we get to watch more Denzel. Who doesn't love Denzel? And I know this sounds terrible because I just finished ragging on the last film with Anne Hathaway being the weakest link. And unfortunately, that was a big problem I had with Courage Under Fire was Meg Ryan. This is a situation where you have, she's the mystery of the film, her intentions and the firing and her getting shot and all that mystery stuff and what really happened in that raid or that incursion in the Middle East. She looked great. She looked the part in a sense that she looked the part. If you look at the movie poster, it looks great. Meg Ryan over Denzel's shoulder. She's got red hair. She's got that fiery attitude. You can see it in the poster, but the delivery just seemed off. It just, again, we said it during that podcast episode. I wish Meg Ryan would just be Meg Ryan. She had this Southern thing and fiery redhead attitude that just didn't translate in the acting chops. I wish she just spoke normal, or her normal. You know what I mean? She left normal. Okay. So that being said, Courage Under Fire, still top 10, number 10. It was a tough one to put it there, but this film, and also I have a hard time watching Matt Damon being so thin. I just have a hard time with that. People really get into their acting where they lose that kind of weight. Speaking of Christian Bale and The Machinist, I believe it's called The Machinist. I will never watch that film. I've seen the photo of him, obviously 100 pounds or whatever he is. It's hard to watch people essentially abuse their bodies. Essentially, it's tough to watch. I know that's what they're doing, but I have a tough time because I'm trying to just watch a movie and have fun. I don't need to be challenged that much. I don't need my film to be challenging so much where it's hard for me to watch. I know there's tough subjects and tough things to go through, but yeah, Courage Under Fire is also one of those films too where once you know what really happened, the mystery of it all, the interview process that Denzel goes through, you lose the what happened goes away. And so the repeat reviewing of this goes down a little bit. So when I watched it for the podcast, it'd been a while, so it was good to watch it again, but I think it might have to be another 20 years before I watch it again. I remember everything that's happened. So the mystery part's gone, and then the replay value kind of goes away. And there's no real oomph in this until sort of the very end. But yeah. All right. Number 9. We have Daniel Craig in Defiance. And unless people get mad at me, number 9. Look, we're getting to the point now of there's only 9 more films, and these are all great films. We're getting to that part of the filmography now where they're all really strong films. Ranking them isn't a question of because it's number 9, number 8 is that much better and so forth. It's not really till maybe the top 3 or top 4 where we get to the level of A-level films. But Defiance was a really good film, and I watched it for the first time for this podcast. I'd like to thank my co-host Scott coming on for that review. And Daniel Craig was great in it. I didn't even know it was a true story until I started watching it. It was a really fascinating film on these brothers. Liv Schreiber, again, doing a great job in this film. This film, I definitely recommend to everyone to watch all these films, essentially. But if you haven't seen Defiance, give it a chance. It is a really good film. This falls into the repeat watching. I don't know if it has, again, that oomph to watch it over and over again. Some of like my higher films that I've done throughout the years. But it is a very well crafted, very well acted film. Once you just know the story of the brothers and the survival and what they went through, I don't know if repeat viewing would do much for me. But I'm glad I saw it. It belongs in the top 10 and it belongs in the top 9. I think also it was almost what I expected. Part of my criteria here is what do I expect from this film? I did have high expectations for a film like this, dealing with this subject matter, knowing Ed Zwick's ability to film war scenes and to deal with this tough subject. And he did it. So he met my expectations. It didn't exceed those expectations, but they were met. I guess it lacked a little bit of the emotional oomph of some of his other war films. And number 8, lest you think I'm just like shiting all over anything that has to do with like romantic comedy or all that good stuff. We have the amazing About Last Night, his debut film, who I had Katie on as my co-host, who helped me debut this season of The Director's Chair, like that network, but also of Ed Zwick's filmography. Yeah, this is a combination of a film that I did not have expectations for. So I would say they were low, but they were pretty low in the sense like, sure, it's a romantic or dramedy of adults, young adults finding love. But the acting of Demi and Rob Lowe and even Jim Belushi, all fantastic. Elizabeth Perkins was great. The great central cast. I love the story. I thought everyone did great. It was adult. It was well acted, great dialogue. It was an 80s film without feeling like an 80s film in that sense. It didn't have, no offense to some of those 80s films. It ages very well, minus, of course, some of the styles and stuff like that. But you get what I'm saying. I miss these type of films. And a lot of dialogue, just dialogue heavy, great back and forth. And yeah, it's great to see a young Rob Lowe and Demi Moore doing some great acting that you forget sometimes. I think some of these earlier roles from these well-known actors and what they really brought to the table back in their hungrier days of acting. So this movie ranks a little higher for me because I had no expectations of this film. They were exceeded more than I thought I was going to enjoy the film. So it ranks a little bit higher. And it's one I would definitely watch again for sure. Number 7. Yes, I can hear my co-host Katie yelling at me. Oh, Ryan, how could you have Tom Cruise's Jack Reacher never go back beat About Last Night? I can tell you how, because I'm a guy. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe a little bit, but I enjoyed this film. I'm a Tom Cruise fan. I've said it before. I'll say it 100 times. I am a Tom Cruise fan. So having him on film, he is an easy rewatchability for me. I've seen a lot of his films more than once. Jack Reacher, I'd only seen the one time, then watched it again for this podcast journey. But this is a film I could easily watch again. And I had a great time. I guess it's also for memories for me. Watch it with my son, my kids now, but my one son who's 10 years old, who's a big Tom Cruise fanatic. And it was fun watching it with him. So I admit it goes up a little bit higher for me, just the replayability it has with my family. The Jack Reacher character is cool. There's a great argument, I understand, regarding Tom's height. I didn't realize the public were such heightists. I didn't know we're allowed to make fun or criticize people's height, but I guess we can. So Tom Cruise is too short to play Jack Reacher, right? I love how other topics in Hollywood regarding other factors of the human body are often debated. Height seems to be one that people can be heightists and never be criticized for being that way. But the point is, I think Tom Cruise did a great job at channeling the Jack Reacher personality and fighting skills. Colby Smulders was great in it. She was fine in it. Craig thought that she maybe lacked the level that Tom brings to the table, so Tom had to bring his acting down a little bit. I can see that, but I just wish this film had done better, of course, because I think everyone, that enjoyed this film, well, of course, would have loved to have seen another adventure of Jack Reacher and the gang. But we also mentioned that we're getting that anyways with the long running, and not in a bad way, 8 film series, whatever it is, of Mission Impossible, which are just high octane, incredible stunt sets. But the interesting thing is regarding Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible, played by Tom Cruise, not a very deep character. It's just a platform for Tom, and rightfully so, to showcase his incredible stunt work, and again, stunt pieces and action sequences. They're great action films, and they're intelligent action films too, mind you. However, the character of Ethan Hunt isn't really that deep. But ironically, Jack Reacher is more of a deeper character and personality that you actually really enjoy seeing him in certain situations. So the set pieces aren't as grand as the Mission Impossible films, but the Jack Reacher character is actually a much more interesting character. So yeah, it's too bad we didn't get more Jack Reacher. All right, number 6, maybe higher on the list than people would think. 2018, Ed's last film, maybe forever. Trial by Fire, with my co-host Doug at the time. Doug actually reached out to me after the podcast dropped. He goes, "Boy, that was probably the best one we ever did." And I admit, it was a fascinating discussion. And the reason why it's so high on my list, maybe not necessarily for the replay value, I admit, but the reason why it's so high on my list is because of the emotional impact it had for both me and Doug, was how much it made us think. And that's really important for art as well. So yes, Jack Reacher doesn't necessarily make you think, that type of film. It's fun to watch. But the reason why I like Trial by Fire is because it challenged my own preconceived notions regarding the death penalty. It made me reconsider some previous thoughts I had on it, to the point where it did change my mind on things. And that's a powerful thing when art can do that, when a movie can do that. So this has to rank higher for me for that reason, for what it did to me. Now, replay value, I probably won't watch it again. But what I did was I researched things, I looked into things, I went to interviews. Like, it spawned so much from the film that it deserved to be in the top 10, right in the middle of the pack there, number 6. Great acting by Laura Dern and Jack O'Connell. That's the other thing. It made me want to see more of those individuals of their films. So it did all the things that a film should do. It made you think, challenge your preconceived notions, and actually change them. Sometimes people just watch what they want to watch because they don't want to be challenged on preconceived things. And it was done very well. And it's bittersweet because it's a great final film. If this is Ed's final film, like I said, he's in his 70s. We have to retire at some point. And if this is his final film, there's nothing to be ashamed of with this film. It did not do well at the box office, but don't let that discourage you or dissuade you from watching this film, dear listeners. If you haven't already, please, I beg you to watch Trial by Fire. Give it the love it deserves. Trial by Fire, number 6. Number 5, we have The Siege. Yeah, I know. I admit, this is, maybe it's higher than for some of you. Again, it depends on what your kind of films are. If you're a romantic comedy person and those type of films, yeah, you're Love and Other Drugs and About Last Night and Leaving Normal, they'll be higher. But for me, yeah, I admit, I'm a guy, adrenaline junkie, blah, blah, blah. No, I like this film because it's a combination of action set pieces. It deals with a time in our world's history before 9/11, ironically, but definitely it was in the air because this was 1998 when this came out. So this is nostalgia. We're getting to that part of the list where nostalgia plays a big role for me and Ed's films. So I saw this in 98. I was 23 at the time. So I was definitely knee deep in the love of Ed Zwick and his films that he was releasing in those types of films in the 90s. It has Denzel, check. It has Bruce, which I'm a big fan, of course, in the 90s and 80s and 90s. It was so cool to see Bruce play the character that he played. It had some dark moments in it. It had some intrigue. It had some mystery, some action sequence, and it had the lovely, I have a crush on Annette Bening as an actress and as a person. I've always enjoyed her. I think she's just adorable, pretty, powerful, strong actress. Seeing her in this film too, mixing up with Bruce and Denzel, is really great. So yeah, this hits all the spots for me as for nostalgia, and then for repeat viewing. I think it's a great film. I think it's filmed well. It looks good, and I think the maligning that Bruce got, it's just people, I think he did great. I think he did fine as the general. I think he played the role well. Was he the strongest of the three? No, it was Denzel, Annette, then Bruce, but still great film. I enjoyed it. It is number 5 for me. And thank you to Scott who joined me on that episode. Number 4, we have the amazing Blood Diamond. Thank you, Doug, for joining me on this episode of Blood Diamond. Boy, this was a rough watch. I hadn't seen it since it came out in 06 or around that time. And that's probably why, and we mentioned that, of course, during that episode, this was a tough watch, but it was so darn good. I am a huge Leo fan. I love his films. I love his acting in films, I should say. I think he's an incredible actor. He has a proclivity for younger gals, legal, mind you, but younger. And that can sometimes smear people. And I get it. I understand people's personalities will affect their art or people's enjoyment of that art. But that being said, I love him as an actor. I think he's an incredible actor. And he really does a great job in this movie with his accent. He carries it throughout the film. His death scene at the end, spoiler alert, is so well done. Yeah, this is such a great movie. Of course, the message about the blood diamond industry. And actually, this is another film. Since this film came out, I have never bought a diamond. That's right. I'll never buy a diamond. No, even if I was like a multimillionaire type thing, I don't think I'd buy diamonds, knowing unless you can really guarantee this did not come from the blood diamond mining tactics. But it just also goes to show you the greed that we, as humans, so what we do as humans, the whole idea of what we're willing to sacrifice in humanity for something that's sparkly. This is a powerful message by Ed that he portrays in this film. Not necessarily a true story, but these are true stories on how diamonds come to be in the world. All great actors in this film. Great job by the cast and crew. Incredible child actors in this film as well that we talked about. Jaimin Hansu, I'm probably butchering his name, and I apologize because I'm doing the top of my head. Of course, Jennifer Connelly, the lovely, beautiful, amazing, talented Jennifer Connelly, another great actress that I can watch her in anything, and she's always fantastic. She's an incredible actress. And Blood Diamond at number 4. Number 3. We're getting down to it, folks. Who gets bronze medal? Who gets bronze medal? Tom Cruise gets the bronze medal for The Last Samurai. And I can understand why this was Ed Zwick's number 1 box office movie. It had everything. It's a sweeping epic as Tom Cruise, big box office draw, and especially in 2003, probably 22 years ago already. The score, the acting, everything about this film is just amazing. I totally get why it's number 1 in the box office, but it's number 3 for me. This is an incredible film. Check out that conversation if you haven't already with myself and Craig. We love this film. The set pieces, the designs, the costumes, the acting, everything about this film was amazing. Totally get why it was number 1. And it's number 3 for me. Did I mention it was a good film yet? Did I mention that yet? Yeah, this is just a great film. And what I think people misunderstood about this film, people thought this film was whitewashing. They thought Tom Cruise was The Last Samurai. And I get it. You look at the poster, it's him. It says The Last Samurai. You must think, oh, it's Tom Cruise. But no, it's not him. He is not the last. Yeah, he is amongst the samurai. As we know, it's Ken Watanabe, who is The Last Samurai. But yeah, it's a beautiful film. Incredible. Number 3, Last Samurai. All right, guys, this is it. We're getting to the number 2, number 1. Now, of course, when I mention number 2, you're going to know who number 1 is. And I'll give you my reason. This was tough to objectively state what was my number 2 versus my number 1 and the reasons why. But boy, it was close. And people's opinions will differ. I understand that. So coming in, cue in the drop of a drum roll sound, which I will not do because my life is busy. I can't do that silly sound effects for everything. But in your mind's eye, drum roll, please, for number 2. We have Glory. That's right, Glory. Just hearing the musical score in my head right now makes me want to cry. I had a great time with Doug on this. You think 2 manly men? Okay, 1 manly man, me. No, Doug, I'm not the man. But yeah, this movie makes us both cry like blubbering idiots. I love this film. True story. The courage of the 1st Black Regiment to fight in the Civil War. Everything about this film is just amazing. The set pieces, the acting, and even Matthew Broderick. With Matthew Broderick, he did a great job of the film despite the behind-the-scenes drama. It made for a fun podcast discussion, but on screen, Matthew did a great job. Of course, Denzel won an Academy Award. We have Morgan Freeman, Carrie Ewells. This is just an incredible film. Totally deserves to be in the top 2. I know some of you who are listening think, Ryan, this has to be number 1. Hey, there's a lot of good arguments, especially for me. This was the film. It was Glory that got me on the Ed train. It was this film. Who made this film? Ed Zwick. Who is this guy? So this is definitely my gateway drug into the Ed filmography. That's why it ranks so high. It is number 2. It's just tough. I had to choose between this and number 1. I'm like, which film, put a gun to my head, would I watch over and over again? Again, this is an incredible film, and I'll give my reasons why number 1 beats out just by a smidgen. And the soundtrack of this film is amazing. The acting is amazing. The story of this 1st Black Regiment fighting for their freedom, it's all there, folks. It's just an amazing, amazing movie. But we're going to have to get into number 1. Why number 1 did win. for my top film by Ed Zwick. Obviously, if you're tracking, I'm sure you haven't forgotten Legends of the Fall, 1994. A couple reasons. Like I said, Glory was... Hey, I was one of those people, Glory, who got it on DVD. I didn't see it in the theater, so I admit I didn't add to the box office draw. I think Glory helped Legends of the Fall become the box office success it was as well. Because even back then, Brad Pitt wasn't Brad Pitt at the time. Does that make sense? Like, he wasn't the Brad. I think this film, word of mouth gets around. Who's this hunk of a guy? So there wasn't a lot of big names on this film at the time, really, like box office draw, incredible actors, but nobody on this movie was like, I'm going to this film because of Brad Pitt. I'm going to this film because Anthony Hopkins, Aidan Quinn. I'm sure people maybe, but you get what I'm saying. Tom Cruise, we get it. They went for Tom Cruise for Last Samurai. We get that, and the sweeping epic that it was. This one's another sweeping epic. I think word of mouth got around too as this film continued at the box office. But I actually saw this film because of Ed Zwick. So that's why it ranks number one for me a little bit. Glory was not a mistake. It was an accident. It was a happy accident, right? Like, I watched Glory because I like war movies. I've always enjoyed war movies, where the Civil War, Vietnam War, World War II. I love a war story. So Glory was definitely that, and I didn't realize until I watched it just how emotional it made me. Even as a young teenager, I was emotional. But Legends of the Fall was the first film I saw in the theaters because of Ed Zwick's Glory. So I went to the theater saying, oh, he's tackling this film? Cool. Because I remember seeing this trailer in the theater. I can't remember for what film, but I saw the trailer for Legends of the Fall in the theater, and I was like, holy smokes, the soundtrack, that whistling soundtrack, and the horse riding and the narration, everything about this film in that trailer. And then it said, like, from the director of Glory, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm going. And this film has it all too. It chokes you up, the drama between the brothers. And that's the other thing. I have three brothers in this film. There's two brothers, or three brothers in total, but I'm one of four. But so the drama of the brothers and the love of a woman, and I get it. Julia Ormond is gorgeous, and she's great in this film. Strong female lead, and just the tragedy and the drama and the heartbreak, and just everything about this film is everything I love in a sweeping epic, heavy drama, incredible score. When Henry Thomas starts playing at the piano at the very beginning, I talked about in the podcast, when he starts singing that song, it's that score. It's his score. It's interesting, the character's score, but he's singing that song when he dies, and Tristan, played by Brad Pitt, runs to him. No! It's just like, guys, this film has it all. It has like ships. It has the ocean, a war, horses. It's an insane film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. That's a discussion for another day. What is Ryan's top 5 films? This would be in the top 5. Yeah. Fantastic film. Go listen to the episode. We spent a long time with Katie and myself. We spent a long time talking about how much we love that. And yes, we have Brad Pitt's glowing locks, blonde hair. Okay, folks, thank you for joining me on this season of Zwick's Flicks, the Ed Zwick podcast. This is the final episode of said podcast. I have decided, and we are going to move on to the Director's Chair Network. So Zwick's Flicks is season 1. Brian De Palma, hosted by Craig Cohen, will be season 2 on your feeds. And season 3, starting very shortly, season 3 will be... So 2 and 3 will be like, they'll be going together, right? You'll get the feed as you get the feed, but you get the point. They're going to be alternating episodes. But the idea is that season 2, if you have some podcasts have a chapter or season like organizers, right? But anyways, season 3 will be Michael Mann's films. I have a lot of guest co-hosts lined up for season 3, the Michael Mann season, my second season of a director. The first episode, Thief, starring James Caan, will be myself and Kaylee. Kaylee, as you'll remember, the lovely Kaylee, she was with me for the movie Love and Other Drugs. She's returning to do Thief. That's the film she chose. And like I said, I have some new co-hosts that weren't on the first season coming on for the second season, but I have already confirmed, Katie, Craig, and Doug, they're coming back as well. So stand by for that. Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Ed Zwick for giving us some incredible filmography, for his hard work behind and on the director's chair. Thank you, everyone who's joined me for this journey. I hope you'll stick around for my journey with Michael Mann. So do not change the dial, is what I'm saying. If you're on this feed, if it hasn't happened already, it's going to be called the Director's Chair Network, and you will see that change and a different thumbnail and all that good stuff. So don't panic. That's why the change. So it just depends when you listen to this. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.